everyone. It's great to see all of you here today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jessie Haynes, and I'm the director of Google Goods, which is a product and marketing group that focuses on building tech accessories for Android. And it is my great pleasure today to have the opportunity to introduce all of you to Jessica Herrin, the founder and CEO of Stella and Dot Family Brands. Prior to Stella and Dot, Jessica co-founded theweddingchannel.com when she was at Stanford Business School. She also attended Stanford for undergrad. she has won all manner of awards and accolades. Been on Oprah and the Wall Street Journal, all over the place. And now, in addition to being an entrepreneur and a CEO, Jessica is an author. And her first book, Finding Your Extraordinary, is debuting, will be this month. So we are so thrilled to have you here with us today at Google, Jessica. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I think he mic'd me to sit
Okay.
Sorry. Not that I have a side in anything other than audio. Hello, Googlers. It's great to be with you.
Thank you again so much for being here today. So Jessica, we have a couple of things in common.
Our name?
Our name, Jessie, Jessica. So that's exciting. And we also are both involved with accessories. Tech accessories, just getting started, and you have built an accessories empire, which we're excited to hear all about. So I want to talk a lot about the book, but maybe we could start by just hearing a little bit about how it all began. You've been an entrepreneur since you were very young. So tell us a little bit about how you got from your beginnings to where you are today.
Well, when I started my career out of college, and I think about how incredibly fortunate I am to have been born, in the U.S. and going to school right at the time when women earned graduate degrees equal to men, and I go to school in the heart of Silicon Valley at the commercialization of the internet, right when Google was being formed as well, in the same neighborhood. And so in many ways, I think you could have walked into a poll and become an entrepreneur in that climate and that environment, and that was certainly my interest. And out of school, I went to work for technology startups. And I learned a tremendous amount. I loved what being an enterprise software, at the time allowed me to do, because I did a whole bunch of things that I had no business doing inside of a small company, and I never really felt like I had to be qualified to go do it. I had to go do it to get qualified, and it was a great hyperdrive experience early in my career. And then I went back to business school at Stanford, and I really went there to be an entrepreneur. So when I wrote the business plan for what became Wedding Channel, we actually got called out in a competition by Kleiner Perkins and ended up getting funded before I graduated. So I dropped out to do that. I went there to become an entrepreneur, not to get a pedigree. So it didn't seem like risk to me. It seemed like efficiency to get that done at the time. And there was a real window to jump through and start that particular business at that time. It was the idea for Wedding Channel, which is an aggregated gift registry. I have to think back at the time. This was before retailers were on the internet. It was very much when Yahoo ruled the world, of search. So you can date that in your own minds. And so that I worked at an enterprise software company that was aggregating price and availability for computer parts. And I just sat there and said, okay, what's going to go online early? They don't have bandwidth. People don't trust in e-commerce at the time. So how can you take that and apply it to the real world? I'm like, gift registry. Gift registry, somebody's already picked it out. The shopper doesn't care. It's just a price based on the relationship. It's a large market. Technology isn't used much by retailers. They're going to need somebody to come in and show them how to do it. So it was this very analytical textbook, find a market opportunity, use technology to disrupt it, build the software platform, and then we turned it into a content platform and ultimately merged with Wedding Channel and then sold it to the Knot. So I did everything right academically, and at the end of the day, did not feel successful at all. I created commercial success, but didn't care about the mission of the company. And then I did the real soul searching of saying, okay, if I'm going to work that hard, because at that time I worked every day and night. I also wanted to become a mother, didn't know how I was going to reconcile those two things. I wanted to make sure that the next business I started, I felt soulfully connected to the purpose. And when I was there, a lot of people reached out to me and said, how do you, what's your best business advice? We'd been on Oprah, and the Oprah version of the story looked great. It looked like the American dream. The reality is, behind the scenes, it was a bit of the American nightmare. So I didn't have good advice on how to democratize entrepreneurship, how to do, create an experience where I wasn't saying, okay, go get a specialized degree, raise venture capital, work every night and weekend. I mean, what kind of advice is that really to when someone says, what should I do? So I wanted to think about reinventing the home-based platform. Yet when I looked at that industry, it felt very dated. It felt made for a 1950s housewife, and it did not use technology at all. And so I just went through this experience of working with the retail industry and bringing in e-commerce, knowing that you could work for direct selling and recognizing that technology was going to completely change it. So what Stella really is a few things. It's taking my technology background. First, I say, of everything, we're not an accessories company. We're a people company because it's purpose-driven, and it's about creating flexible work for women and a few good men and reinventing flexible entrepreneurship. But we're people first. We're a technology company because we're really a social selling platform that spans several brands across women's lifestyle businesses. And we have a killer design in product. But really, it all stemmed from my desire to be incredibly connected to the purpose in my work and to do what I learned in business and as an entrepreneur, but apply it to something that really head and heart came together.
So cool, and I love this concept of sort of democratizing entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about, unpack that a little bit in terms of how, because the model does seem dated. How does technology play into it? I think that
it's mostly when I look at just women in business and really people who are impacted by that, which is just the children they're raising, the partner that they're with. So much is enabled when there's a little bit of extra income. It can create a lot of opportunity for people. So I knew that flexible work had to exist, right? It has to exist for people who 80% of our entrepreneurs actually, this is their side gig. They have other full or part-time jobs outside the home, but they have incremental needs that they need to pay for. So it's students who are working during the summer, teachers who need jobs outside of that. One of our leading sellers is an OBGYN, and she does this because in her day job, she's so frustrated by the lack of recognition and joy. Even though she loves delivering babies, she hates administration and bureaucracy and always being told her charts are wrong, and she loves this outlet. And it also taps into this other side of her. So there's a lot of need out there, but if you look at the models of the past, there was almost everything wrong with them in terms of the business model would be too easy for the person getting into business to get in trouble and really be in the business of buying inventory rather than selling. And you really take care of that with policies and ship to customer and really just changing everything about how we work as direct to the consumer versus selling through the distributor. So there's no quotas, no territories, and completely flexible income. But with technology, if you look at our newest brand, Keep Collective, which did $45 million in its first year, it's on the pace to triple in its second year. If you're picturing an old school party, that's not it, right? They have a mobile app where they do a virtual design, they personalize it, they share it to social. So it's all through digital tools. Because we're trying to take this very busy person and say, okay, you got an hour today. How do we make you productive? And that's why I fell in love with technology. It's why I loved, as non-sexy as it seemed, that's why I freaking loved making enterprise software for bars back in the day, because you'd take this person and superpower them, right? They would have no information at their fingertips, and it would take them a day to do something, and it would be error prone. You could really take technology to superpower a person. So that's what we do in our businesses. It may seem like it's softer because it's accessories, but actually everything that you're doing on the sales side, and really customizing the experience. And then there's also an entire online university and incentives platform, because for flexible entrepreneurship, you've got very time-limited people that need all motivation, no management to go do something. And so all of the triggers and the incentives and the recognition is really powerful. So knowing what it is, I can tell if your sales are, if your average event has a few less orders than somebody else's, I can look at that and say, you're not inviting enough people. I can look at the data and say, oh, you need training on hostess coaching. I can also look at the data and say, I can see your average order is you're not finishing the look. You need to, let me coach you on how to say, would you like earrings with that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of power of using technology in a classic model to help that person. And why that's so rewarding is, that person is trying to pay for fertility treatments.
Yeah.
Right. So helping them be really profitable is really rewarding.
So cool. So you are very busy, and yet you decided to write this book in your spare time. Tell us a little bit about what motivated you to take the plunge and put all your learnings and guidance in.
Well, I did not write that book because I wanted to be an author. That is for sure. I love my day job and as a CEO, and that's what I want to continue to do. So I became convinced to write the book by a phenomenal team that's here today, because I've come to see that in the businesses that I've created, it has really not been just because I've been successful. It's been because I've had the ability to develop success in other people. And I've seen this story unfold in which I've come to believe that there are some key traits of an entrepreneurial spirit that each one of us have. It's part of our human DNA, and that you can hone it. And whether you want to advance in your career inside of a company, whether you actually want to start a business, whether you're leading in your community and your family, I believe these key success traits can be developed in other people. And by far the biggest reward I've gotten is seeing an impact on making somebody else more successful in their life, and true success, not just a title on your resume and money in your bank account, but happiness in your heart and peace in your mind. So it became for me an opportunity to try to extend outside of our community, where I've seen it work thousands of times, and help other people find their extraordinary, right? We take an ordinary person and help them do extraordinary things by cultivating their self-confidence, because it has to start with a belief that success is not just for somebody else, but it is in fact for me, and that I can in fact change the course of my life. And then put in place a framework of the 6 Ps of an entrepreneurship, starting with passion. You've got to have it. You've got to have a path to make it real. You've got to have the right positive mindset so that you learn how to see opportunities and not obstacles, having the right people around you to help lift you and otherwise make it worthwhile, the perseverance to keep going, the productivity to get it all done in a day. So putting that framework out in a book is again to try to help other people be a guide to creating their own success.
What, for somebody who is working in a corporate structure, and you've told some of these stories in the book,
Yes.
like how, when you're not necessarily actually an entrepreneur, but working in a big company like Google, which obviously our culture is very entrepreneurial, but it's still a big company. How do you kind of apply that framework to a large corporate structure?
Well, absolutely. So there's 2 things on that. First of all, you are a leader and the world is awaiting your instruction. And that has nothing to do with the size company you're in, what your title is, and what the org chart is. That leadership is something that you unleash on the world. And opportunity accrues to those who see that and believe that and act like that every day. And I had this experience, which I am so grateful for, because more valuable than I would say my education was in a formal institution, after doing a startup at the age of 24, when I was really naive and pretty much knew very little, even though at the time, of course, at that age person, you think you know everything. A mentor said to me, listen, if you ever want to go run and build a large company, you should actually work at one. I'd only worked at tech startups. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. So when I wanted to have a kid, I followed my husband to Texas, where he went into venture capital, and I worked at Dell as a middle manager at Dell. And there were some of those things where I felt like I lived inside of a Dilbert cartoon. And that was an incredible company. Google's one of the world's best companies. And yet, of course, it's a large company. So of course there's bureaucracy and meetings and all that other stuff. But let me tell you, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing today had I not had that experience. But I also couldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't show up every day inside that organization and be a leader and be my best, and not get frustrated by bureaucracy, but find an opportunity to add value. And I think that comes from being raised by a single dad who had an immigrant mother who was educated to the 4th grade in Italy. He had started having a paper route. He's an engineer, and now got a master's degree in engineering, but he had to work to put food on the table when he was in the 4th grade and put himself through school. And so we just, this family DNA we have this like intense work ethic. Like if you are cashing a check from somebody, you don't act like, what have you done for me lately? Like you show up and say, how can I serve? You got a problem? I'll solve it. It's like the vanilla ice school of thought. Like, okay, I am here. I am lucky to be here. I'm going to find the biggest need and I'm going to solve it. And I think sometimes in a big company, you can get frustrated. But if you go at it like, look, opportunity is all around me. How can I go add value and be entrepreneurial within that giant beast? You will make it magnificent and have a tremendous impact. And so I think that big companies are critical to a learning development, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to make an impact, but being entrepreneurial within that company is really, really important.
One of the things you talk about is success and defining success for yourself and not falling prey to sort of society's definition of success, which maybe is measured more in kind of money and promotions. I love the way that you actually define the success of your company, which is, I think, how much you pay out to your business owners. But and I love that idea, but it's hard in a world where there is that societal pressure around how much are you making, when are you going to get your next promotion, and so forth. So what are some tips that you offer around kind of how people can define their own success?
Well, I did it the wrong way first, right? I achieved success in other people's eyes, and then I had this feeling every day going, is that it? And so I'd sit there and think, oh, I've checked off this resume, I've checked off this list, and yet I'm not really happy. And life is short, and it's too short not to love what you do, why you do it, and who you do it with. And so if you're always looking left, right for external validation on other people saying, I anoint you successful, you can feel like there's something missing. And so I think that, one, you've got to be willing to ask yourself these very big questions and not be afraid of getting the wrong answer or the answer that you don't want, which is, do I feel soulfully connected to what I do? And if no one paid me, would I bound out of bed in the morning to do this? Now, I'm not saying you should confuse passion for a job on the unicorn farm where you don't have to wash windows and there's not hard work or there's not meetings and bureaucracy that you put up with, but you just have to make sure that the kernel there, the core, is really worthwhile. And so I had to quit and go do something that people thought was crazy, right? When I was the internet poster child in Silicon Valley and I quit to follow my husband's job to Texas, have a baby and become a middle manager, people looked and then started making jewelry out of my living room. I had to risk a lot of people being like, oh, there goes another one dropping out or doing something female or, saying something derogatory about what I was doing. But at the end of the day, I had to say, look, there's a very short list of people I am trying to impress, and I am on that list. Other than that, it's the few people that I love. We spend so much time trying to impress other people, and actually other people don't even care that much. They're not even thinking about you. They're too busy thinking about what other people think of them. So I think you just have to have a very active discussion with yourself on what matters to me. If I were to ask my future, I actually outline very tactical steps and exercises in the book around mindfulness and doing certain things like asking your future self what you want to be remembered for, working backwards in time, what will matter to me at the end of this year, what will I have done today to action it? Because I think it's a discipline to think that way. It's not I go away and have a spiritual guru moment where someone says, this is your path and this is your passion, aha, you're done. It's really a practice that you keep present in your life to make sure that you are really dreaming bigger, right? It sounds cheesy, but it's true. You've got to ask yourself these really bold questions to come up with the right answers.
You're a mom, in addition to all your many jobs, and you write in the book about a time when you asked another female CEO for some advice about starting a company and having a family at the same time. And I believe her advice to you was, don't do it.
Yes.
How did you react to that advice, and what is your advice for women who want to do all these
very
things?
Honest about it in the book and in life in general, because I love speaking at business schools and or communities of younger people in which they haven't yet gone to that phase of having family and work together. And they often ask me, tell me about what was the sales trajectory of the business? What was really the inflection point? And they assume it's access to capital or some change in the market. I'm like, well, I stopped breastfeeding. I could really travel more. And when I had kids, they really have you. You don't have them. I was hesitant to do the business, my second business, the way I did my first one, in which you raise venture capital, you really commit to somebody else's timeline around liquidity and exit strategy and growth of the business, because I wasn't sure how I would feel as a working mom. So I very purposely went slow those first couple of years and really focused on doing it out of my living room. One, because I knew the business needed a soul. This type of business really does benefit from me being able to say, look, I did it out of my living room while I was pregnant and had another full-time job. You can too. So I proved that to myself and I proved it to others, and there was value in that. But when I had my first daughter, she's healthy as an ox now, so just so you know, everything's fine. But she needed to have heart surgery when she was little, and so all of a sudden, your timeline that's on some kind of pro forma looks like who cares, right? I care only about this. So, and you need to be able to recognize that businesses are going to ebb and flow around life. So I went to an investor. It was easier for me to do again as a serial entrepreneur, because I went back to a partner who had been on my board at Wedding Channel and said, look, I'm going to do something. I can't tell you how fast, but I can tell you it's going to be big and it's going to be great. And I know it's going to change a lot of lives. And oh, by the way, I'm about to have another baby. You in? And luckily we had worked together and goes, you're in, I'm in. But I very much have communicated from day one that this was going to be mission first, that I was going to be a mom first. I still consider myself a mom working, not a working mom. My family comes first. But it was really challenging in the beginning. And the biggest challenge of creating this business was not competitors or product or production or people. It was my own internal guilt as a working mom, because type A people that are the type of people that are going to go be a driver and start a business are very hard on themselves. So I was that super mom trying to make the baby food and do everything and greet my husband with a kiss and make dinner, and almost died alone on I Can Do It All Island. And I very much disclose in the book like how I had to came to that breaking point with my husband and partner, and was like, okay, everyone's level of service is being downgraded, okay, and we are going to have to rework how we do this. So there's a real honest journey about what it's like, and I think it's very relevant to men and women, because the idea that men are taking paternity leave, I love, because even 10 years ago, that was just never talked about or seen. So I think today's group of people are going to be far more co-parenting and far more focused. It is really the bedrock of life and happiness is the people that you love. And if you want those people to be happy, you got to be really thoughtful about what load you're carrying, how you're splitting it, and how you're able to still be family first, but not dim down your dreams and be able to have two people with ambitious careers.
I want to talk a little bit about that, but I also want to let the audience know that I want to open this up for questions for Jessica. So feel free to start making your way to the microphones if you have questions. Just on the topic of working it out with your partner, obviously that's a really important relationship, and with two working parents, what are your tips there, and how have you negotiated with him?
Well, so first of all, I think there was another book long ago, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which seems to be very accurate. And what I learned with my husband, it was actually advice given to us by our Reverend, which, we kind of rented one from the internet to get married. So this was not like a spiritual guide for us, but it ended up that Reverend Vargas's advice during our ceremony ended up being the most pivotal in our marriage, when he told us that marriage is about taking the other person's burdens and making them half as heavy, and their joys and making them double. And my husband would be willing to do that, but I was hoping that he would just figure this out, or it should be so obvious what he should be doing, and why isn't he just intuiting that I'm doing too much and he's doing too little? And actually, you've really got to be incredibly explicit. And so once I was able to clearly articulate, one, I don't have to apologize for being a mom who wants to start a startup. It doesn't make me less of a mom. I can feel great about how I want to impact the world and still feel great about being a mother. So when I figured that out and got over that guilt, and then said to my husband, look, this is what I want. This is how I'm going to be happy. Can you help me? And he does, because he loves me, right? We've been happily married for 17 years, together for 21. And we had to negotiate, okay, this is what this looks like. Every time the kid goes to the doctor, it is not default my responsibility. And then maybe you could do me a favor if I'm busy. It has to be an assumed equal partnership. So I talk a lot about that, like the real tactics of negotiating that. But we've also traded off at times in our career, right? I moved to Texas for him. He moved to this. And I can tell you at the end of my life, I am not going to remember every moment of what our revenue was in that quarter or what, magazine we were on or business accomplishment, but I will remember, what will be most valued to me are my children and my husband. And so I just always keep grounded in the fact that, these are the people that I want to make sure I connect with. I think the other thing that we all need, regardless of what your role is remembering the connection of quality time and making sure that you're still courting that person, right? If when I come in, I'm not on my phone, I am still hello handsome, and that's, I think, really critical to keeping any relationship alive, not even just a parent, a parenting one, spousal one, and friends.
So you are a serial entrepreneur, and you've, built this business, which is now, just growing. How do you continue to cultivate your own entrepreneurial spirit? Do you at times want to, and obviously you've added new brands to the
Yep.
Stella and Dot family. How do you think about nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit while still growing this big company and balancing between the two?
Well, as the company has grown, my role has changed considerably. And I do think to grow the company, you have to grow yourself. And so I'm an entrepreneur, by nature. And I often think when people say, why'd you be an entrepreneur? I'm like, I don't know why I'm 5'6" and I have brown hair. It just turned out that way. I'm wired to do that. I've always looked around the world and seen how I want it to be rather than how it is. And I have just almost a tick-like desire to go fix it and change it. So that's how I started. But to grow a business and actually not have it be about just what you're doing, it really is about other people and shifting that into cultivating the entrepreneurial spirit in others.
Yeah.
And that's been far more rewarding. You can get real bored of yourself fast. And it's far more rewarding for me to shine the light on other people and watch them thrive as a leader and an entrepreneur. So that's been my focus now as a CEO. It's not our top line revenue, it's the growth of our people. And yet still, a friend of mine who gave me the great advice, who actually told me when I was struggling with, okay, I've got 9 direct reports. How do I manage this all? Was that you don't have, just because you're in charge doesn't mean you really, it sounds very glamorous, but you sort of default into whatever hole you're missing, right? So you have sort of 20 jobs at all times. And I always change the way I think about that. How do I make sure that I'm doing enough of what I love? And yes, I'll take care of these other responsibilities, but there's nothing wrong with going to get other people to go do these things. And maybe you're even better at them. But if you have a comparative advantage in doing something else that you uniquely do, or that feeds your soul so that you can have energy to do all these other things, that's a great strategy. So part of launching these other brands and part of the role that I play in them is really feeding my need to create from scratch, yet also fulfilling what I have found to be, I never thought there would be anything grander than being an entrepreneur for me, but that's not true. I have found far more purpose in being a true leader. And in the early part of my career, I can tell you, I sucked at that. I was not a great people leader, and I share some of that in that journey. And then ultimately waking up and recognizing, this is the way to make an impact and grow.
Any questions from the audience? I've got plenty more. Oh, great.
Hi. This is more of a tactical question, I guess, but you're obviously building a lot of different kinds of businesses, and how did you go about sourcing the things you needed as far as like manufacturers or like web development? Like, how do you even start to do that process?
Kiss a lot of frogs. You just go out there and it's volume of activity. And so if you think about the businesses I've done, first I was in enterprise software, and if I knew anything, it was just about software development. And then to parlay that into creating, yes, a software company, an internet consumer company, but in the wedding space, I had to go out there and find everybody who was an expert at weddings. And how did I do that? I literally, who do you know that's in retail? Who do you know that's in thing? And I just kept asking. But it's that concept of prospecting, right? You're going to go ask 100 people to find 10 that are relevant, and one is going to turn out to give you something that you move forward on. So it's just a massive amount of networking and putting yourself out there and being willing to kiss a lot of frogs, have a lot of meetings. Same thing when we went into skincare. I started that business the same way that I've started every other one. It's like, I've got to go find people who are the best in that. And that took years of looking and research and development, adding someone to our board that had that relevant experience, meeting with tens of people in order to go identify the right sources. So I approached it truly like an entrepreneur, which is why you've got, it wouldn't matter why I want everyone inside this company and every company to be incredibly entrepreneurial and that's what I learned from my dad, right? Who didn't necessarily have access or connections. He was just like, I want to teach myself how to be a builder. Great, let me crack a book, get a magazine, go talk to people. So it's not that complicated. You just have to it's a massive volume of activity.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, I've got many. Oh, yes.
Ridiculous in my jacket, but I'm cold in here.
No, it's very cold outside. You get a little extra dose of winter going on around here.
First of all, thank you so much. It is a privilege to have you here. My name is
Thank
Jen,
you.
and I am a 12-year Googler, which is crazy to say.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very proud of that. So, entrepreneurship, I love the notion of democratizing entrepreneurship and making it accessible. I'm curious to know, so you've innovated, you've added new product lines. What's the next thing? What are you going to fix next?
It's really, this is it for me. When people ask me my exit strategy for my company, I think oxygen tank and a stretcher, because my purpose doesn't need to change. Will I continue to expand lifestyle brands on this platform in the social selling model? I think if you don't innovate, you die. So will we evolve our products? Will we evolve the sales tools? Will we evolve the experience for the consumer? All of those things will change. Right now, we've launched 3 brands. 2 of them are brand new. So I want to give them all the oxygen they need to grow into their full potential, because if I keep diluting it without putting the same detail and love I put into the first one out of my living room, they won't survive just because we can rest on our laurels. I've got to go out there and nurture those. But to me, what's next is this. It's continuing. I can't wait to have the party in which we're celebrating $1 billion paid. So that's what's there for me. And I would say this book, Find Your Extraordinary, is what's next. Again, it's recognizing that my joy comes now from seeing that we could be a spark in someone else being entrepreneur or helping them grow. And so putting that out into the world is the start of a movement for me around defining success as happiness, cultivating entrepreneurial spirit in other people, giving a message to women for gratitude, not guilt. And I would love to take this further into a platform where some of those resources become available for free outside of our family of brands, just so that, catalyzing that more development.
Actually, it brings up another question for me. You mentioned early on this online university.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we do have an online university within each of our brands. So when you log into the lounge, whether it's Ever Skincare, you're going to learn how to become a skincare specialist, and it has an all online learning platform to train somebody who comes to us knowing nothing, whether it's about sales or time management or goal setting or the product itself. Or the tools, right? There's an online university there. So we don't just provide the product to sell, there's a whole platform. But what I have come to see in training tens of thousands of people is it's not the how-to that prevents people from getting what they want. It's the will to do it and the will to get back up and do it again after the first time or the first 10 times didn't work. So when I thought about writing this book, it was very interesting because initially I thought long and hard about wanting to show that, yes, I can write a serious business book. I mean, I think as a woman in Silicon Valley, you still sometimes have that desire, that almost reflex to try to prove yourself and wanting to go write that very academic, theoretical business book to show the world how smart I am. But I realize it's not what the world needs from me, because there's lots of framework books and things out there like that. But the reality is, I think you've got to start with how do you cultivate someone's self-confidence and their will? Because it's the will to go do it that is what trips most people up. So with our university, the online university, it spans a lot of topics. And it literally talks about mindfulness and positive intelligence and time mastery, in addition to just the actual tactical things around selling or coaching other people. So yes, and if we go to our conferences, our most popular workshops are productivity, time mastery. Mm-hmm. And so I realized, I'm like, this is an epidemic of people feeling time starved and like they're juggling too many balls. If for our company we could just put that out there for people to access, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the great things, and thank you, I'm so glad you didn't write the academic business book, because this is such a pleasure to read. And I think one of the reasons why so many of the things that you talk about stick is because you anchor them all with really great stories. And you talked about how you've sparked entrepreneurship in so many people. Are there any stories of individuals that maybe you could share with this group? Because it's
absolutely
been amazing.
There's ones I love, and I often think that people are predisposed to think that success is for somebody else and not them, and it has something to do with their circumstances that is going to prevent them from going to do something extraordinary. And yet there are countless examples and stories in here of people who have no reason to succeed and yet did it anyway. And so some of the stories in that book, one that I love is the one of this guy Juvenal Chavez, and I met him at the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year competition. I was very flattered to be up for the award, but then when I met him, he was also up for it. I wanted to be like, vote for Juvenal, vote for Juvenal. This guy is amazing. So he was a school teacher in Mexico, had a young son, decided to come to America, didn't speak English at all. Here could get a job as a bartender at night, and was a janitor by day, and but had the American dream. So if you look and say, is this person going to go do something amazing? You'd be like, no, the odds are all against you, right? You're an immigrant, you don't have any money, you don't speak the language, you have no connections. And he is, right when he got a huge promotion, and he was local at Stanford, so he got this job where he was going to make $14 an hour working in a lab. So he was going to get to clean test tubes instead of toilets. So he was thinking, this is a massive step up. There's some safety there for my family. I'm going to take this job. But his brother-in-law said, let's go start a meat market. Let's just try to go down and create this business. And he went down there, and it's this really rough neighborhood of East Palo Alto back at that time, and walks in, and it just reeks. There's maggots everywhere. There's rotten meat. And he's like, no freaking way. I'm out of here. This is mad. Why would I try to do this instead of, taking this other job? And he was with his wife at the time, who I think has that magical gift. It's one of the P's is a positive mind. How do you look at something like literally rotting meat and maggots and not see what's there now, but see what could be? So out in the parking lot where he marched out, his wife turned to him and said, Juvenal, look again. Don't see what's there. See what you want to see and tell me what it is. And he looked and he closed his eyes and he, in the direction of the place, and said, I see a market where people could shop like they do at home, where the Latina woman is cooking for a lot of people. She shops more frequently. It's a lot more friendly. It's sort of a smaller format. It has different types of food, and it's bustling. And he had the vision in that moment for what would become Mi Pueblo, which is now a $300 million grocery store chain in Northern California. And he now operates with his 3 sons. And I just think that powerful story just illustrates what's possible, how lucky we are and what is truly possible. And you don't have to have anything. But if you have the entrepreneurial spirit and you have the ability to see what can be instead of what is, you don't spend your time in frustration and fear. You experience it, but you quickly recover and go back to imagining what you want. So that's one story that I love. There's the stories of one of our business owners, this woman, Cindy Roadhamel, who's exactly what you would think of if I said mom from Ohio. She's just a total mom who had a blank resume for 15 years. And overnight gets a knock on the door, and her husband is arrested. He's had a great job. They had a fancy house. They had, she loved being with their 3 girls. And he got arrested for a white-collar crime. And the civil trial turned criminal, and he ends up going away for 6 years. Imagine, she's in her community. Her assets are frozen. She literally can't go to the ATM to go buy groceries, and is so mortified and embarrassed. And so what do you do in that moment? You imagine trying to go get a job to support 3 kids when you have nothing on your resume for 15 years. So she hired herself as a Stella stylist. In this 5 years since, she's earned over $1 million. She's paid for her 3 daughters to go to college. She's paid off the mortgage. And her husband just got out of prison. She stayed with him. So certainly for in good times and bad. He admits to wrongdoing, but he's, still fundamentally a good person, and she loves him and stayed married to him. And I think that ability to tap into that strength in yourself and go do something is just this recognition that you have that well of strength was there all along. You could use it even if you're not in a crisis, right? Even if you're not suffering from shame and the need the ATM isn't working anymore, right? So I think that there's several stories like that and many more that I absolutely love. And do you have time to tell you one last quick one?
Yeah, stuff.
This is one of my favorite ones because, I think the average age in this room is I don't know, it's dark out there, maybe in 30s. Is that right? Is that a good guess? I think when people think, here I am, is it too late for me? And what have I done in my career? And I've already gotten this degree, and I've gotten this, I've been here, I've invested this time in this company, here I am. Is it, can I do anything next? There's a story of this woman, Helen, who was a nurse, and she was raised in a time before Title IX where women were made to be athletes or to be in the work world. She was raised she did have a job as a nurse, but she wanted to get married and have kids and be a homemaker. So she did get married. She married well. She actually married a younger man who was the oral surgeon that she was a nurse for, her husband Norm. And when she went to retire, he wanted to start running to get into shape. And she'd been a smoker for 25 years, never run, thought this sounded like hell. But she did it because she wanted to be with him. So they ran a fifth of a mile in their backyard the first day to train for this 10K. And she hated it. Absolutely like side splitting, hated it. And thought, all right, I'm going to do this 10K for you, Norm, but then that's it. And when she finished, she thought she'd never do it again, but he wanted to keep doing it, so she kept doing it. So she's 55, spoke over 25 years. Then at some point, she started realizing that she wasn't running for him, and she kind of liked it, and she started running for herself. And since then, she's now in she's almost 90. She's run a marathon on every continent except for Antarctica. She holds almost every record in the world for being an ultra marathoner. This woman has put octogenarian grandmother, ex-smoker, and Tahoe triple record holder in the same sentence. And it is unbelievably mind-blowing. It's really the inspiration for the running world. She's named Helen Klein. If you're a runner, you might know who she is. But to me, the idea that you can go on to, at the age of 55, you can inspire the world, literally the world, in doing something that the first time you did it, you hated it so much that you wanted to quit and thought you'd never do it again. And she started by going a fifth a mile a day. So if you can do something that you suck at and that you actually dislike and believe that you can go on and inspire the world and getting started in your own backyard a fifth a mile a day, I think that's pretty powerful.
That's an amazing story. So to wrap up, what, I guess, is obviously this whole book is about finding your extraordinary, and it's just as giving a lot of advice. But to Googlers here, I guess sort of if there was one key takeaway that you would want to make sure that they would walk away from this conversation with, what would that be?
Obviously, it's right there in the message of the book, which is that you are extraordinary. You were never ordinary. You were never meant to just live a quiet life, and that opportunity is all around you, and that includes right here at Google. You don't have to radically change the course of your life or the position that you have in order to go do something even more extraordinary and reach your full potential. You have to approach your existing circumstances with that passion, with that path, with the perseverance. So everything that's in that book is as much for someone who's leading in the role that they have, rather than thinking, hey, I've got to step out of this and start a business. I actually think that that's not for most people. As my sibling once told me in a way that only a sibling can, is don't expect other people to do what you do. You're the one that's weird. And she's right. So what your choice that you're doing, it's not less than. I think especially if Google, you live in this very entrepreneurial culture where it's like very, very cool to go out there and start a company from scratch. I don't think that any other choice is less cool, right? And there's the diversity amongst us is beautiful, and your choice of what you're doing is incredibly valid and awesome. And what this book is about is helping unleash every potential that you have into your choices, if they're right for you, so that you love your life more. Not only that you accomplish more, but that you actually create the definition of success that includes happiness and joy.
Awesome. Jessica, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.